You remember yourself before. Before the panic attacks. Before the numbness. Before the silence. Before the weight that never lifted. You remember laughter that felt easier. Sleep that came faster. Mornings that didn't begin with dread. You remember being someone else. Not perfect, but whole. Intact. Recognizable. And now? You look in the mirror and wonder, where did I go? Let's begin with a truth most people are too afraid to say. Trauma doesn't just hurt. It reshapes. Not just what you feel, but who you are. Your voice. Your choices. Your memory. Your reactions. Your identity. It rewires your nervous system. It edits your instincts. It builds walls in places that used to be windows. And it does this quietly, without asking for permission, without waiting until you're ready. Let's talk about what trauma is and what it isn't. Trauma isn't just what happened. It's what happened inside you. As a result of what happened to you, two people can live through the same event. One walks away. The other carries it forever. Why? Because trauma is personal. It bypasses logic. It lives in the body, not the story. It's the flinch when someone raises their voice, the need to plan every detail, the inability to rest, even when everything is quiet. It's not about weakness. It's about protection. Let's talk about the brain. Trauma rewires three key systems. The amygdala, your threat detector. The hippocampus, your memory processor. The prefrontal cortex, your rational filter. When trauma hits, your amygdala goes into overdrive, constantly scanning for danger. Even when there's none, your hippocampus starts misfiring, struggling to sort what's past and what's now. Your prefrontal cortex goes offline, making logic harder, making impulse stronger, making fear feel like fact. And this isn't temporary. For some people, it lasts years, decades, sometimes forever. Let's talk about personality. You think of it as fixed, set, who you are. But what if personality is just a pattern, a survival strategy, a nervous system stuck in a loop? You used to be outgoing. Now you cancel plans. You used to trust easily. Now everyone feels suspicious. You used to laugh freely. Now it feels performative, hollow. These aren't mood swings. They're adaptations. Your mind changed because it had to keep you alive, to help you cope, but it didn't know how to turn off. So the settings became permanent. Let's talk about dissociation, that numb feeling, like you're floating above yourself, watching life happen through glass. That's your brain's emergency brake. When reality gets too sharp, too loud, too much, you disconnect, not because you're broken, but because your body chose survival over presence. And the cost? You lose parts of yourself. Joy, spontaneity, curiosity, intimacy. Let's talk about memory gaps. You remember what happened, but not all of it. There are holes, distortions, fuzz, because the brain stores trauma differently. Sometimes it's fragmented. Sometimes it's buried. Sometimes it resurfaces in flashes, smells, sounds. And every time you remember, you re-feel. That's not weakness. That's neurology. Let's talk about hypervigilance. You walk into a room and scan it. Without thinking, you notice tones, tensions, unspoken rules. You're not paranoid. You're trained. Your body learned. Safety is never guaranteed. So it watches, and waits, and tightens. Even when the threat is gone. Still think trauma is just a memory? Let's go deeper. You didn't just lose your sense of peace. You lost pieces of yourself. You didn't mean to change. You didn't wake up one morning and decide to be colder, quieter, more distant, less trusting. But here you are, reacting in ways you never used to, saying, "I don't know why I did that," avoiding people you once loved, forgetting how it felt to feel safe. Let's be honest. You didn't choose this version of yourself. This version was shaped by silence, by screams, by losses you never got to grieve properly, by memories that live in your muscles. Let's talk about the parts of yourself you lost. You used to be more playful. Now you feel too tense for joy. You used to be open. Now, vulnerability feels dangerous. You used to be spontaneous. Now, control feels like oxygen. But those aren't flaws. They're adaptations. When you were in pain, your mind made adjustments, tightened the gates, lowered the volume, increased the armor, and you survived. But surviving isn't the same as living. Let's talk about emotional blunting. After trauma, many people stop feeling things fully. Love feels muted. Joy feels suspicious. Peace feels temporary, like the calm before something bad. So you don't celebrate. You don't relax. You don't trust the good. Because you've learned, good never stays. So why let yourself feel it? That's not pessimism. That's protection. Let's talk about personality shifts. Some people become more aggressive, not because they're bad, but because anger feels safer than helplessness. Some people become people pleasers, not because they lack boundaries, but because fawning kept them safe. Some people withdraw, not because they're cold, but because connection feels dangerous. You say, "I'm just not the same person I used to be." But maybe that person couldn't survive what you went through. Maybe this version is the one who could. Let's talk about perfectionism. It's not about standards. It's about control. If you're perfect, you won't be hurt. If you do everything right, no one can leave. If you anticipate every outcome, you can't be blindsided again. But perfection is exhausting, and it never delivers what it promises. Still, the trauma-trained brain would rather be exhausted than vulnerable. Let's talk about isolation. You pull away. Stop reaching out. Tell yourself, "They're better off without me." But deep down, you miss connection. You miss touch. You miss being seen. You just don't know if you can survive being misunderstood again. So you wait. Alone, hoping someone breaks through the walls you don't know how to lower. Let's talk about hyper-independence. You learned not to need anyone, because depending on others meant disappointment, meant abandonment, meant pain. So now you do everything yourself. Never ask for help. Never show weakness. And people admire it. They call you strong. But you know the truth. It's not strength. It's wounded self-protection. Let's talk about sleep. Insomnia, nightmares, racing thoughts when the lights go out. Because the dark is quiet, and in the quiet, the past gets louder. Your body doesn't know the trauma is over, so it keeps the engine running. All night, every night. And when you do sleep, you wake up tired. Because even in rest, your nervous system doesn't let go. Let's talk about shame, the deepest wound of all. Shame says, "It was your fault. You should have known better. You deserved it." And no matter how many times people say, "It wasn't your fault," the voice inside whispers louder. But maybe it was. Shame is the scar trauma leaves on your identity. It doesn't say, "I was hurt." It says, "I am the problem." And that lie? It shapes everything. Who you love. Who you let love you. What dreams you chase. What life you believe you deserve. Let's talk about identity confusion. You look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself. not physically, but spiritually. You're living, but not as you. You're performing, protecting, pretending. But underneath, you're not sure who you are anymore. Because trauma doesn't just take away your peace. It takes away your reference point. And when you don't know who you were, you don't know who you are. Let's pause. You've changed. That's real. But here's what's more important. You didn't fail. You adapted. You made it. You survived something your nervous system believed would kill you. And now comes the hardest part. Learning how to live again. Without waiting for the next blow. You survived what others didn't see. What they couldn't understand. What they never had to carry. And because of that, you learned how to disappear. How to shrink. How to stay silent. But now you're learning something harder. How to come back. Not just to the world, but to yourself. Let's talk about the return. After trauma, many people become ghosts. They move through life with the lights dimmed. They show up at work. They smile at dinner. They answer texts. But they're not home. Healing isn't just about feeling better. It's about returning to your body, to your boundaries, to your emotions, to the moment. That's terrifying, because for so long, leaving yourself kept you safe. But now you're ready to come back. Slowly, tenderly, with caution, but also with courage. Let's talk about self-compassion. It's not indulgent. It's not weakness. It's not letting yourself off the hook. It's survival. It's resistance. It's revolution. Because every time you choose to be kind to yourself, you're rewriting the script trauma handed you. You're saying, I matter. I'm allowed to heal. I'm allowed to take up space. Let's talk about ritual. After trauma, time feels broken. Memories blur. Days feel the same. Meaning dissolves. Ritual brings rhythm, grounding, symbolic structure. It can be small, lighting a candle, writing a letter to your younger self, walking barefoot on the earth, breathing with intention. Ritual says, I'm still here. This is sacred. I choose to live with meaning. Let's talk about legacy. Not the legacy you leave in the world, but the one you leave inside yourself. The decision to break cycles, to feel instead of freeze, to speak instead of swallow, to love with boundaries, to rest without guilt. That is a legacy, and it's one only you can build. Let's talk about belonging. You thought you had to heal alone, that no one would understand, that your pain was too strange, too heavy. But look around. There are others, carrying different traumas, but walking the same path. When we speak our truth, we create bridges. When we hold space, we create home. You are not alone. Not anymore. Let's talk about forwards. It won't always feel this hard, this heavy, this endless. There will be mornings that feel light, moments of laughter that surprise you, connections that don't trigger alarms, love that doesn't feel like war. And when those moments come, let them in, even if they scare you, even if they don't last. Because healing is not a destination. It's a direction. You're not broken returning to whole. You are whole, learning to live broken and beautiful. Let's close with the truth. You will never be who you were before the pain. But you don't have to be. You are someone new, someone forged by fire, someone with edges and depth and light that cannot be extinguished. Not despite what happened, but because of it. You are not your trauma, but you were the one who rose from it. And that is enough. That is everything. You're still here. You've lived through nights you thought would break you. Mornings where getting out of bed felt like lifting the weight of your entire past. Moments where you didn't recognize your own voice. Didn't trust your own hands. Didn't feel like you belonged anywhere, not even in your own body. But here you are. Not healed. Not fixed. Not back to who you were. But standing. And maybe that's a beginning. Let's talk about rebuilding. It doesn't mean going back. You can't go back. That version of you no longer exists. And maybe that's okay. Maybe healing isn't about becoming who you were, but about discovering who you are after. Someone forged, scarred, resilient, not untouched, but transformed. Let's talk about grief, because part of healing is grieving. Grieving the you who smiled without hesitation. Grieving the years you lost to fear. Grieving the innocence that never came back. Grieving the safety that was stolen. And grief is not a detour. It's the path. Let's talk about forgiveness. Not for them. Not for the ones who hurt you. That's a separate story. This is about forgiving yourself. For how long it's taken. For the things you did to survive. For the days you couldn't get out of bed. For the relationships you couldn't hold. For the way you disappeared. You were doing your best, even when it didn't look like it. Especially then. Let's talk about identity. You're not the trauma. You're not the reaction. You're not the mask you wore to stay safe. You are what remains. What insists. What keeps showing up. You are the one asking these questions. The one watching the pain. The one choosing not to pass it forward. That's you. Let's talk about trust. It won't come all at once. It starts with tiny choices. Trusting your own judgment again. Trusting that you're not too much. That your needs are valid. That not everyone will leave. That safety is possible. And yes, sometimes that trust will be broken. But that doesn't mean you were wrong to try. Let's talk about hope. Not the shiny kind. Not the naive kind. But the quiet hope. The one that whispers, maybe I can love again. Maybe I can rest. Maybe I'm not broken, just becoming. Hope is not the denial of darkness. It's the refusal to be ruled by it. Let's talk about integration. The trauma doesn't leave. Not completely. But it doesn't have to run the show. It can sit beside you. Behind you. Lowered voice. Smaller shadow. You don't erase what happened. You learn how to carry it, without letting it drag you under. You build a life not in spite of it, but around it, through it, beyond it. Let's talk about you. You're not who you were, and that's okay. You've been cracked, burned, shattered, but in the breaking, something sacred happened. You saw what mattered. You learned what lasts. You discovered parts of yourself no peaceful life could have revealed. Your compassion, your depth, your fire. Let's talk about choice. You can still choose joy, even if it feels unnatural. You can still choose connection, even if it scares you. You can still choose yourself, even if no one ever did. You're not a prisoner of your past. You're the architect of your future. It will take time. It will hurt. It will feel like dying sometimes. But it's not. It's becoming. Becoming the version of you that includes the pain, but isn't defined by it. Let's end with this. Trauma stole something from you, but it didn't destroy you. And now, you're building something new. Not perfect, not untouched, but real. And finally, yours.